In today's episode with Dan's Kona Dream project, we're going to finalize the last bit of the winter testing. And it was pretty exciting actually in the Run Lab VO2 test, which we did at Leeds Beckett University and with a physiologist. And then I went across to my trusted physiotherapy clinic that deals with most of the Olympic GB triathlon squad up north here, and some Olympic marathon runners, to name but a few, and other sports. So we did a run VO2 max, a bit like we did the bike in the previous episode. It's really important to get those values. I'll tell you the how, the why, the findings, and the next steps. And then with the physio, bear in mind we're not injured. We wanted what's called an MOT, a full assessment, top to toe, to complement some of the strength and conditioning that we found the previous week, and to bring it all together from a more of a holistic view. So if you're interested in these two areas, tune in. All right, so how did we do it? You can see in the videos now, it's masked again with a high caliber treadmill that can ramp up to rapid speeds for sprinting. We of course don't need that. We had two parts to this test because we needed to find the sub-maximal. So this is all based on blood lactates, and you can see is also using a gas mask to look at ventilatory. So it's nice to have both. Sub-maximal start really easy, 8-9 k's an hour. We went up every 3 minutes by 1 kph, kilometer per hour. The most important thing I wanted to get from it, and certainly Dan being the athlete, was when do we start to go from aerobic into the anaerobic domain? How efficient is his low end in terms of running economy? So how much oxygen do we need to run at a certain pace, the cost to the body? And a key to a really good marathon runner is to have a very good economy. We'll touch on this in a little bit. A very good fat max, a very good area around LT1. So your aerobic contribution needs to be as high as possible. And we want to see where his VO2 max, his top end is, so we can work out the same on the bike if there's a ceiling issue, a low end issue, or the mid zone area. So that's how we did it. Every 3 minutes, it went up 1 k an hour to get to the 2 millimoles of blood lactate, BL. They also did oxygen saturation at the same time, just to see if there's any issue. And actually a new thing was they also did blood glucose. There's a relationship between blood lactate and blood glucose. We did that at rest, and then as he went through the levels, which was quite interesting to see the response, because they took a blood sample and at the same time they can split it. I've not seen that effusion machine before do it. It's normally just a lactate monitor, so it's more accurate. And then we wanted to just get above 4 millimoles, which is so that's LT1. This is LT2, and we wanted to see where that deflected. And then we pretty much stopped the test a little bit after that. So we did one more stage. So it wasn't super hard. He did get a really high heart rate, actually working just above 4 millimoles. We stopped that, and then there's a 10-minute rest. And then part 2 was the ramp to get to this VO2 max. So I will dive into that in a second. As I said, part 2, which is quite interesting for the testing process, was a VO2 max like we did on the bike. Now, that's obviously the crux of it is in the title. We used the ramp, so incline. We started at 12 kph, so just above LT1 in terms of the results, but just below his threshold. Okay, so not super fast, but once you go at 1% and it goes up 1% every minute, generally about 9 stages. So we got to 9% in capacity. The speed stays the same. The idea is to go to maximum in a short space of time to try and get a peak output. He came out at 52 millimoles per kilogram per minute. Okay, so you've got a slightly higher VO2 max on the run than the bike. That's fairly common. And I'm just looking at my data here, 184 heart rate max. So we know he was working right at the top end. And yes, we could see in real time if he is actually, you can see in the graph here on the video, that he actually was still improving and he got to VO2 max, because some people can't make it. They either give up heart and lungs, cardiovascular, or their muscle conditioning. So bear in mind, Dan has done no top end work for months and months and months. We've just been doing easy running. And yeah, to get to a VO2 max and a maximal state is super good. I'm really stoked where we got to. We'll get the findings in a few minutes. And that's kind of the how of, it was pretty uncomfortable. You can see the post video right here, the interview as soon as he stopped. So what do you reckon, Dan? Just finished that ramp test, 9%. Be honest.
It's hard work.
Hard work?
Yeah, tough. Right now the end, can't even talk.
Yeah.
Right by the end, I was pushing it.
182 heart rate max?
Yeah, I felt it.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, he's got such a super low sweat rate. And I said this in the bike test. You're going to maximum, you would expect people absolutely dripping. So it's proving good for warm climates. So well done, Dan. That's great. So 2 parts to that, submaximal, and which took about, there was about 8 stages, so about 24 minutes. And then a VO2 max ramp to exhaustion, which was only about 9 minutes long. It was absolutely cooked. And then we moved, an hour later, we had to go to a physio in the same area down the road at Coach House Physiotherapy Clinic. So that was at Coach House. Why? I've been going to Coach House since I think 2013, 12 years. Alison Rose, she looks after the Brownlees. Jess Ennis, when she was competing, Kelly Holmes, GB divers, squash players, the Emil Karras, the Olympic marathoner who came 4th at Paris. So really high experience. I got to see lovely Jen, who did a full MOT. So you can see a couple of images here and videos going through pretty much rotation, mobility first, looking for some easy low-hanging fruit. Bearing in mind, we've got to be on a bike, we've got to run, and we use our shoulders in swimming. We had looked at the strength conditioning assessment. Breathing came up a lot, ribs flaring, and instability on one leg. So those are the real easy, quick ones. Dan knew a lot of that. The flexibility was a huge issue. Now that you can really get on top of in a few weeks just by doing some specific targeted yoga moves and mobility that's relative to Dan's joints complex, because our hips all sit in different positions, our hip sockets. So one hip stretch might not be the same for you as it is for him. It's just due to our abnormalities of our hip sockets, and that's one joint, for example. We don't worry about the knee. The ankle's a huge one, and the big toe joint. And then from seated position, he spends a lot of time at his desk. This thoracic curving with the forward neck posture, which I noticed straight away as soon as I met him with my background. But of course, we want to try and implement that in and carry over specificity. That's the most important thing. How do we do it? We started with basic calf raises, calf capacity. Every runner needs to have very good calf capacity, bent leg and straight leg. There's different science research around that. About 25 to 30 reps, for example, is a great place to start in terms of how good is the quality of the form, not so much, can they pump and do 25 reps, because some people can muscle their way through. We realized there were some issues going on there, which I'll chat you through in the findings. His mobility is not super, it's adequate, but the rotation is adequate were the words, but could be improved. And actually, it was more about awareness from standing and seating. The body can get there, but it's set in the wrong way. So that needs to be carried over to the running. I mentioned the big toe. So it's mobility, it's big toe. How do we do that? Physical assessment there. It's shoulder and core, shoulder complex, core assessment, just the basics, can we activate, and then hip strength. So there was some muscle testing going on. You can see some of these pictures, and just going through obliques, glute medius, all those areas. So now we're interested in what were the results. That's the main thing. And finally, the next steps. Okay, So similar to his bike VO2 max test, the low end needed some work. And because we've not done top end for ages, the top end was limited. Okay, so speed wise, we've come at 11 kph, LT1. We normally like to see a nice separation between LT1 and LT2, second turn, so first turn point where you predominantly aerobic, where you do a lot of your easy runs, steady endurance work. LT2 is your second turn point, otherwise also known as VT2, ventilatory threshold 2, around 4 millimoles of blood lactate. Now, with elite marathon runners, we would see that more like the first turn point around 16, 17 k's an hour, and then the second turn point sort of maybe 19, 20. So everything shifted across. So they'll be quite close together there. With someone like Dan, amateur, we'd want to see that closer to 13 k's an hour, and then potentially a bigger gap all the way up to his second turn point. That's is what it is, and we know we have to work on his capacity, his low end. VO2 max was around 14 kph. So you can see the correlation, the relationship here. That's hitting the ceiling of 14.5. So we're not going to go anywhere. Similar to his bike threshold, we need to raise the ceiling. So they don't work independently, although they're two different sports. They normally line up fairly well. And we've got heart rates to go with that, which will give us a top end heart rate. The fat max, which we got on the bike as well, where we can do a lot of his easy runs, and that was maximizing out at 9 kph, so quite a lot lower than LT1. So we'll get massive gains around there, and sprinkling a little bit of intensity in to stimulate VO2. But at the moment, we're going to do a max aerobic block for 6 to 8 weeks just to improve the whole fitness. So I can't work on everything at once. We're doing a lot of swim technical, and the bike volume has to come up. So the running is in a fairly decent place in terms of starting point. It was around 21 minutes for 5Ks, and that'll only get fitter and better in terms of physiology as we do more volume over the next 10 to 12 weeks. Economy, which is really important to know, you can only get that with gases, a ventilatory mask. It was at 219, so less than 204, which is where we'd want to see that. That is milliliters per kilogram per minute per kilometer, the cost of oxygen, sorry, to run, to move, and the overall cost to the body. If we can get that lower, how do we get that lower? Lots of LT1 work, strength training, and plyometric training is proven to improve that. So as much as we can handle based on the two other sports as well. We will do an 8-week block, and we won't re-lab test. We will probably do some specific work around heart rate, around 11 kph, around LT1. I can cross-correlate. We can also do a 5K park run to see how the overall capacity, and I can also do a 4 to 5 minute flat out effort around 1 mile, which will give me a similar in-field testing to check how we've improved that. Next steps with physio is, as I mentioned in the previous section of the video, is mainly get his flexibility sorted, get the big toe moving, get the core engaged without the ribs flaring, so a lot of posture work, calf capacity for running, and all around general awareness, and working on opening up the chest, allowing the shoulder to do their job in the water, allowing the core to actually engage when running instead of flaring the ribs, low back tightening, and everything switching off in the core. As soon as he leans back, the core switched off. So that was really highlighted, enlightening for Dan to put it together from a static and slightly dynamic testing process to where we want to go and how that will correlate. Bear in mind, he's run 4 marathons, 4 majors already, and done 4 or 5 marathons, and he's done 4 Ironmans. So like, it's not that he's new to running. Imagine if that was just improved from, we didn't even touch this, and that was improved from just movement. And this is going to carry over to his everyday life. That's the most important thing, guys. We're not just training for an Ironman and then see you later. Health, wellness, and the physiology, physical assessment side. So that sums up and that's ongoing. That sums up episode 3 in terms of the last bit of testing. We've got a couple more things to cover in March 25, and well, then it's just head down, maybe another training camp and a couple of races lined up. Tune in for some more, subscribe, like, send us any comments, any questions. If you need some help around this area, if you're lost this long in the video and interested in some coaching, please reach out. Thanks so much.